Okay, so I'm the Managing Director of Sullivan Brown. Sounds very grand. It's not, there's 5 of us, but it's my business. And we do 3 things. We do HR recruitment, so we hire recruitment professionals for businesses. We have a business called MySay that does outsourced new starter and leaver interviews for clients. But finally, and probably most relevant to today, we have a division called Sullivan Brown In-House Consulting, and we work with businesses to help them audit their recruitment processes, bring to life their recruitment processes, and improve their own direct hiring capability, which some people think is a bit of a strange thing to do when we are essentially a recruitment agency for HR people as well. But we find that the 3 marry very well together because they all sit nicely in the world of recruitment and retention, essentially. Okay. All kinds. Small, large, well-known, unknown. So to give you an example, some of our current and very recent clients, the likes of a company you probably won't have heard of called Acorn Care and Education. They deliver specialist care to children with autism and education. We work with Virgin Money, who you will have heard of, on their in-house recruitment processes. We've worked with Newcastle Building Society, with the Royal Institute of British Architects. So it's really wide and varied in terms of size and sector. Yeah, there's essentially one big common theme that they come to us for, and whatever their individual challenge is, their main aim is to attract, recruit and retain the best people. They may be facing different challenges in doing that, but all of them are essentially looking for the same thing, which is why they're working with us.
Okay, so they might share a common, I wouldn't say goal, but a common problem in that regard. What about the types of challenges that organisations face? What are you unearthing in your work, in your engagement?
Yeah, you see, now that's where it starts to get really interesting. I say that because I'm a complete recruitment geek. It may not be interesting for you at all, but for me it's really interesting. Our clients have a whole range of different challenges. Essentially, they're all after the same thing, but when we get down to the brass tacks of it, there's often different things that are causing them challenges. So that could be, we believe we're a really good brand, but we're not attracting people. Can you help us understand why? It can be, we are attracting lots of people, but that's not turning into really good hires for us, and we don't know why. It can be, we are spending way too much money on recruitment, and we don't know why. People are joining us, but they're leaving very quickly, and again, we're not sure why that is. We've invested in a huge recruitment team, but it's not necessarily hitting the bottom line in the way we wanted it to. We're a consumer brand, and we don't believe that our customer experience and our candidate experience is right, and that could reflect on us as a consumer brand. So there's all kinds of different challenges that companies are facing. I think one of the biggest is that with the growth of online recruitment and the internet in recruitment, because bear in mind I started in recruitment 20 years ago when there was no internet and no email, and we had to fax CVs, and people used to write in response to an advert in the paper, if any of you can remember that. You receive huge volumes of applications, and I think one of the biggest challenges that companies have is how do we engage with people, how do we give them a good experience whilst at the same time dealing with this massive volume of applications that we're getting, if we're lucky enough to be getting them in the first place. It definitely is. I think whenever I start work with a new client, the first thing we look at is what is already in place and what is already happening. So we will look at whatever metrics they have, and we find that completely varies depending on the client. So quite a few of the clients we've worked with have no proper recruitment systems in place. So when I ask for their metrics, they don't have any. And essentially what they're reporting on is anecdotal feedback and a bit of kind of educated guesswork, which isn't brilliant if you're trying to understand what you need to do to improve the recruitment experience. On the flip side, we have companies that have more metrics than they know what to do with. They can present me with 1 million reports, but in actual fact it's not really telling them very much, or what it is telling them they're not recognizing and they don't know what to do with that. So and obviously everywhere in between then, companies that have certain kind of metrics, but what has changed is the type of metrics that people need to be looking at when they're looking at recruitment, and what really matters in a recruitment journey. They need more now. I think that the standard reporting is fantastic because all of that is still really important. However, as the role of recruitment functions has changed, there is much more focus on candidate sources and candidate tracking and candidate experience. It's become almost more like marketing. Because if you go back to what I said at the beginning, so much is around candidate experience, but also attracting the best people. So companies want to understand, where do we find those people? But not only where do we find them, what should we be saying to them to get them to engage with us? So it's almost becoming like what marketing departments do when they're looking at consumers, in the same way that a big consumer brand would look at, Tesco would look at, okay, what other supermarkets are available, what are our customers thinking when they walk down the aisle, where do we put the fresh bread, typically I would imagine. It's the same thing in recruitment now, because essentially we are selling opportunities to the people that we want to attract, and how do we do that? And so as recruiters, we need more in-depth analysis of candidate source tracking and candidate behaviours to understand what we need to do to attract and hire the best people. Well, I think it's a really exciting time in recruitment at the moment. Again, I would. But there's loads of things going on with new systems and new technology and new selection techniques. But essentially, a lot of people that hold the purse strings in a business still feel that recruitment is get your vacancy, advertise your vacancy, deal with the people that are responding to your vacancy. And unless you are really kind of into recruitment, you wouldn't know everything else that's around. I think it's up to us as recruiters and as HR professionals to educate other people within the business as to what recruitment means in a modern market now, and what we have to do and the challenges we face to attract people. And the reality is that advertising makes sense to people that hold the purse strings. They understand what that is because it's been around for so long, and they've probably applied to adverts themselves. In the same way that agency spend, they understand what that is. However they feel about it, they understand the value that it brings and why they would do it. When you start talking to people about implementing an applicant tracking system, first of all, they might look at you quite blankly, but you're going to have to be explaining why that's a good thing to do as a business. And I think when you start looking at return on investment in terms of being able to handle the amount of applications that come in, if you're a highly regulated organisation, being able to have an application form that means you don't lose people halfway through that form, whether it's being able to advertise in lots of different places at once through your applicant tracking system, and whether it's being able to respond to people and give a better candidate experience with the numbers that you're getting, or actually whether it's using it to host a career site that's selling your organisation better, that there are all kinds of benefits to it. I just think it's about informing those people and educating people that do hold the budgets within the business why it's so important to a business, and it really, really is at the moment, I think. I can.
God for that.
Now then, we didn't rehearse it, but I did bring with me. So one of the companies that I work with, when I started working with them, they literally had nothing. So when I went in and asked for recruitment statistics, everyone kind of looked at me blankly. We didn't know what their cost per hire was, what their time per hire was, what the number of vacancies were, what the number of applicants were. We literally knew nothing. So what we did was we did our best to get the statistics together with the finance department, and actually we then implemented their applicant tracking system, Jobtrain as it happened. And they went into the year feeling that their cost per hire was probably around about £1,500 per head. So we set ourselves a target of bringing it down under £1,000 per head. And the nice thing about having the system is that in the first year, we actually brought it down, and I have it here, to £550 per head. And this year we're in our second year, so we know that we're comparing to like for like, and currently at this moment in time this year we're down to £431 per head, exactly, because I did the board report yesterday. So and where that's really made a difference is, one, we can actually tell people what it is because we didn't know, and then when you're trying to get budgets signed off to do something a bit more whizzy and fantastic, it's really hard if you can't show any return on investment on the basics. But the reason we've been able to do that is because we've been able to tell where our applicants are coming from. So we've been able to be smarter around the advertising spend that we're incurring and where we're investing that. But actually, we've been able to see where we have hired candidates that are sitting on our applicant tracking system that an agency has just submitted, but we already have them. So we've been able to save that spend. And we've been able to talent pool, which I think has been the biggest advantage, really. So, you know, they recruit a lot of the same role over and over again. And sometimes we can't hire those people when they apply because the vacancy just isn't there, or we have it but it's in the wrong location. We now have a technology where we can go back to those people when the right vacancy comes up and we can hire them. We don't have to spend anything else. So it's been able to help us work smarter. What it hasn't enabled us to do really is reduce the size of the recruitment team, mainly because it wasn't very big in the first place, but it has enabled that resource to be more accurately and more effectively used to engage with people. So there's all kinds of reasons we've been able to do it, but yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question, and it's something
it's a long question.
It's a long question, but it's a really good one, and it's something that I actually feel really strongly about. So forgive me if I now start to act like I'm up for election. I feel really strongly that recruitment is a people process, and that to recruit the best people, you have to engage them, and you have to engage them better than other companies that are trying to engage them. However, I'm also not a dinosaur, and I can see, you know, all of the changes that have happened already in my recruitment lifetime. As I was talking about before, email, you know, that amazing new innovation, and internet, it has changed the face of recruitment, and it has made it harder to engage with people for all kinds of reasons that I'll not go into, but it has made it better, but it's also made it more challenging. And I see examples of companies that have used technology probably, you know, right from the start of implementing large recruitment systems, and I've seen their employer brand suffer as a result of it because they've lost the personal touch and they've lost that engagement that used to attract people to them in the first place. But I've also seen companies use it really well in that I don't think it's a threat to the role of the recruiter. I just think the role of the recruiter will change. I think that technology and AI and whichever form it comes in will make the foundation and the basic process of recruitment, which I'm a huge believer in, much easier to automate. However, the role of the recruiter will become much more around the marketing and engagement, and I'm hoping that what companies will do is embrace both. They will recognize the value of technology to deal with kind of the volume processes that sit at the very foundation of the recruitment process, but they will recognize the value of people and recruiters in, one, being the people that are keeping up to date with the technology that's out there, but also helping them understand how they engage with and market their roles and opportunities and company to the best people. It will become more like a marketing role and dealing with the employee value proposition and the employer brand than it will just about dealing with application. Well, when we work with a client, we work to what we call a 7-stage candidate to colleague journey. I know not everyone likes the word journey, but it's a 7-stage process. And to us, it starts with exit interview. If you're not understanding why people are leaving your business, you're not understanding why people want to join your business or what you have to change. And it goes through all the basic processes of how do people get authorization to recruit, what is the requisition process, does anyone speak to that hiring manager, who does what, along all of those sections. And I think, quite often people will call us in and it's the end result that they're thinking of. How do we attract and retain the best people? And sometimes they've really understood that there's a basic process to be followed, and sometimes they haven't. So we always start with basic process, because if you don't have good foundations in place, none of the great stuff that you do on top of it is going to stick or be successful. So we start with that basic process, and these days I would always start with a system. I like you, Chris, I worked in recruitment agency, and I still have an agency. We recruit HR people, and I don't think any recruitment agency would dream of not having a system. So it amazes me how many companies don't have a system. So we always start with that. We put that in, but actually then where we're adding the real value and where recruitment teams are adding real value, I feel, to their businesses is understanding the importance of employee value proposition. What are people looking for? How do we engage with them? How do we get them to come to us? What is our employer brand? How are we viewed externally in the marketplace? Do people even know who we are? Do they even have an opinion? And if they do have an opinion, what is it? And do we know then how we get them to engage with us and go through our process? And then once we have got them, how do we make sure that the process they go through is good? And how do we make sure that actually it does reflect us as a business? Because sometimes it can be too good. And then the actual real life experience of someone when they come to work in that business just doesn't live up to what they've been sold. So much as we always start with the basic process, and often that is where improvement is needed, where I see recruiters really adding value to their employees now is much more around the attraction and selection of people, and using the best tools and the best techniques and helping hiring managers to choose the right people. There's huge amounts of work now. I'm seeing most of our clients are building behavioural frameworks and looking at behavioural and values-based recruitment rather than just technical skill. And I feel it's the role of the recruiter to help the hiring managers with that and make sure that they've got the tools and the knowledge to attract and select the best people and then go on to retain them, rather than being about placing an advert, writing an advert and sifting responses, which is essentially what it used to be. I really do. I think usually now when I'm working on site with a client, some of the people that I'm working most closely with are the marketing teams, because a lot of the clients that I work with, they have marketing teams and they concentrate a lot on their consumer marketing, their brand marketing. How do we get people to take our mortgages? How do we get people to use our schools? How do we get people to buy things from our shops? But what they haven't realised is that all of that material that they're producing is actually recruitment marketing material. A lot of companies still see it as two separate things, and it absolutely isn't. People are making decisions on companies based about what they're seeing about them out, at places like this, in the press, online. And I think, if you are in recruitment and you've ever placed a job on LinkedIn, for example, and we do this all the time, we place all our jobs on LinkedIn, but we also put pictures of our dog in the office and the lovely view from our office, and they get more shares and likes than any job that we put out. If we put out a picture of me sat here looking scared before I started this morning, all of our clients in our network are more likely to share that than if I post a job for a HR business partner this afternoon. The two are absolutely intrinsically linked, and you have to have ways of linking that. And I think that's why systems actually bringing it back to that are really important, because if you engage with someone, if someone is attracted to you as an employer, but you don't have the right job for them at that time, what do they do? How do they engage with you? And does that CV just sit in someone's inbox and you hope that they remember them, or does it go somewhere ready for when you do have something for them? So I absolutely feel that our role as recruiters has become much more aligned with marketing and sales, and always finance, we can't get away from finance, than it has as just a recruitment function. I really see that.